My podcast, and I'd like to welcome you to our new series, Fireside Tales. In this episode, I am sharing an original story written by me and composed by the incredibly talented Jesse Van de Velde. We've done these kinds of videos before on our other channel, but we're super excited to be bringing them here. So join us every Thursday at 6 a.m. Arizona time here on this channel or anytime on our app for new installments of our original audio dramas. And for those of you who are already subscribed, I want to send a special thank you. Your support allows us to take creative risks like this new series and means so much to us. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Now let's begin. The wind had stilled by dusk. All day it had blown from the north sharply, steadily rattling through the orchard and over the roof slates of the old stone manor. But as evening approached, it quieted, and in its absence, a different silence took over. The kind that falls with snow. The kind that muffles the world, even before the first flake touches ground. Inside the manor, the kitchen was warm, not lively, not noisy, but warm in a way that made the air feel gentle against the skin. Stone walls, oak beams, a hearth near the far corner, the kind of place built not for beauty, but for shelter. And tonight, that shelter was full of breath and quiet motion. Burrick stirred the pot slowly. He stood before the hearth, iron ladle in one hand, the other resting on the rim of a blackened copper kettle. Inside, pear slices softened in honeyed water with cloves and cinnamon bark. Their scent filled the kitchen, sweet and sharp, like memories softened by time. Behind him, Mags moved without hurry. She wore 3 layers of wool, all different grays, her apron stained with herbs and the faint gold of dried saffron. Her hair was pulled into a thick knot, bound in twine. Her hands were never still. "Add a pinch of elderflower," she murmured, not looking up. Burrick didn't ask why. He never asked why. He simply stepped aside, took a pinch from a muslin pouch on a rack, and dropped it into the steaming mix. The boy watched all of this from the bench. He was small, not as young as he looked, but quiet in a way that made him seem younger. His legs dangled over the edge of the bench, too short to touch the floor. In his hands, a thick wooden bowl, warm with snow porridge. He stirred it idly with a spoon, though he'd already eaten most of it. "Will it snow tonight?" he asked, not lifting his gaze. Burrick paused, listening. The hearth crackled. The logs hissed softly, giving off little bursts of sap and smoke. The only other sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock near the door. "Yes," said Mags, by full dark. The boy nodded, as though the answer had been expected. He didn't seem afraid of snow, just curious. He watched the fire now, eyes half-lidded, the spoon still turning in slow circles. Burrick moved the kettle aside and hung the porridge pot over the hearth. He stirred it with care, scraping the sides to keep it from sticking. Mags brought over a bundle of dried lavender and laid it on the bench beside the boy. "Keep that with you," she said gently. "It'll make the dreams sweeter." The boy lifted it with both hands, sniffed it, and gave a small nod. The kitchen filled with low light as evening deepened. Candles were lit, first one on the table, then 2 more on the mantel. Each was made from beeswax and shaped by hand, with little coils of dried rose petal tucked into the base. The flames swayed slowly, as if they breathed with the room. Mags lit a 4th candle. This one was special. It sat in a carved wooden holder, shaped like a dove. She placed it on the window ledge, beside a folded cloth and a shallow bowl of salt. "That's the keeper," she whispered, brushing the wick. "It stays until morning." The boy's eyes followed the flame. "Why?" She looked at him, smiling faintly. "So the house doesn't forget the light." Burrick brought over the last batch of bread from the warmer. The loaves were small, round, and dusted with flour. He split one with a knife, revealing steam within, and handed a half to the boy. "Eat it before it cools," he said. "It remembers the oven better that way." The boy took it. He didn't say thank you, but he didn't need to. Burrick didn't expect words. Outside, the first flakes fell. Slow, wide, drifting. Not like a storm, more like a sleep falling on the earth. They hit the window without sound. Mags poured 3 cups of cider from the clay jug, No spices, no heat, just a cool, still sweet taste of pressed apples from the fall. She handed one to Burrick, one to the boy, and held hers with both hands, sipping slowly. "To the hush," she said. Burrick raised his cup. "To the light," the boy whispered. "To the warmth." The cat arrived from somewhere, unseen. No one saw it come in. It leapt up onto the bench beside the boy, curled beside his leg, and began to purr. No one questioned it. The manor's old beams creaked gently above them. The herbs hanging from hooks swayed slightly in the warmth of the fire. Lavender, sage, rosemary tied in linen and faded by seasons. Above the hearth hung a dried orange slice, kept from the Yule tide just past. Burrick stood and opened the cupboard drawer below the bread shelf. Inside lay a stack of napkins, a tin of dried marigold petals, and a narrow jar filled with blue thread. He removed one piece and held it out to the boy. "For your wish." The boy tied it around his wrist, slow and careful. "What do I wish for?" Mags answered. "You don't choose it tonight. The thread does." The candlelight flickered. In that glow, the boy leaned back against a bench, one hand on the cat, one wrapped around his cider. His eyes were heavy now, and though he didn't close them yet, the lids dipped lower with each blink. Burrick checked the latch on the window. Mags lit a sprig of rosemary from the hearth and let it smoke in a shallow dish. The room filled with a clean, earthy scent, purifying, ancient. She moved it in slow circles. "For what stays unseen," she murmured, "and for what we welcome." The boy yawned small, round, and full of breath. The cat stretched. The fire settled. The candles burned on, and the snow outside began to fall in earnest, covering the orchard, the lane, the roof, soft as memory, quiet as sleep. The wind did not rise again. It had left its work to the snow. Mags placed a sprig of cedar on the hearth ledge. "So the spirits can find their way," she whispered. Burrick placed a sliver of bread beside it, something to remind them of home. A knock sounded once, not loud, not hard, just once on the back door. No one moved. Mags glanced to Burrick. He nodded. Only a visitor passing through. She stood slowly, opened the latch, and let the cold air in. Nothing stood there, but something had been. She placed a sprig of cedar on the step. "Safe rest," she whispered to the dark. Then she shut the door. The fire didn't flare. The candles didn't flicker. The house simply breathed. The boy had slipped sideways, now, head resting on a folded cloth, the lavender bundle tucked beneath his chin. The cat remained, eyes open but still, tail flicking once before, curling tighter. Burrick poured the last of the cider into a small saucer and set it beside the hearth. "For thanks." Mag sat back down. Neither spoke. The snow thickened. The night deepened. And still, there was one last thing to do. Mags rose again, slowly, joints stiff beneath her layers of wool. She crossed to the cupboard and took down a small wooden box, carved with vines. Inside, 5 tiny bells. She handed one to Burrick, one to the boy, and took one for herself. The other 2 remained inside the box. Without a word, each held their bell close, pressed against their chest. Then, together, as the wind quieted outside and the last ember pulsed in the fire, they rang them once. Not loud, just a chime, enough to wake a kindness in the dark. Then, silence again. Burrick returned his bell to the box. The boy did the same. Mags left the last to where they were. "Some guests don't need hands to hold theirs," she whispered. She closed the lid. Outside, the snow had filled the orchard paths. No footsteps, no lights, just white, soft, endless. The boy finally closed his eyes, and the kitchen, candlelit and still, became part of the hush outside. Now the fire is low, and the candles burn slow. Listen with your breath, and let your thoughts float home. The hour was growing late. In the kitchen, everything had slowed. Even the fire now flickered more than it roared, as though it too were growing drowsy. Embers pulsed softly under a bed of ash, giving off a gentle warmth that seemed to hum through the stone floor. The boy hadn't spoken in a long time. His eyes were closed and his breathing had grown slow. Not quite asleep, but drifting, somewhere between the scent of cinnamon and the echo of a hymn. Mags reached behind her and brought out a small tin box. Its lid was scratched and old. She opened it with care, revealing dried petals, marigold meadow sweet, elderflower, and a handful of soft blue threads. She took one thread between her fingers and handed it to the boy without a word. "For a wish," she whispered, as if speaking too loudly might scare it away. The boy didn't ask what kind. He just nodded, tied the thread gently around his finger, and curled deeper beneath his blanket. The candle in the dove-carved holder flickered once. Then again, it was still steady, but the kind of steady that only comes just before sleep.